about hearing it from people who were right there on the front lines of history themselves. And that's exactly what we're about to get. It is my pleasure to welcome to the festival for the very first time the former Secretary of State, former National Security Advisor, and Provost of Stanford University, who is also a two-time New York Times bestselling author, the remarkable, amazing Dr. Condoleezza Rice. Is going to be interviewed for us by one of the best interviewers I know, who has his own show on Bloomberg, our National Book Festival co-chair and very generous supporter, Mr. David Rubenstein. Please welcome both of them. And thanks and enjoy.
Delivered through them. You know, first presidents matter. The United States of America was pretty lucky that George Washington actually didn't want to be king. I don't know how many of you have seen Hamilton. It is really a great show. But it becomes very clear that we got lucky with the particular combination of founding fathers that we have, and many places haven't been that fortunate.
Now, you write about Latin America, you talk about Colombia, how democracy has made progress there, and generally the military juntas of the 60s and 70s are gone.
Right.
But what happened to Venezuela?
Hugo Chavez happened to Venezuela. You know, you can get a really bad leader who doesn't get checked by those around him with considerable oil wealth. The oil curse is real. When I was Secretary of State, the price of oil went to $147 a barrel. It empowered people like Chavez, who then tried to buy elections across Latin America. And he single-handedly, step-by-step, destroyed all of the really important institutions of the opposition. He was succeeded by somebody who is Chavez without charm, and Chavez without Chavez's street smarts. And Maduro has taken the country down. I hope that this is one where the Organization of American States, the Latin American states, need to be all over Maduro to do something, because it's sad to see a middle-income country where people can't find food and they can't find medicine.
Now, we've had an African-American president, but we've never had a female president, never had an African-American female president.
Right.
Have you ever thought...
Well, thank you very much, but no. You have to know your DNA. You have to know your DNA. And I was on the campaign trail with George W. Bush. I'll never forget, you know, we'd go to 5 campaign events. At the end of the day, he was raring to go. I just needed to get back to the hotel. Now, there are people who draw energy from the process. I don't so much, and I've never liked politics particularly. I do love policy. The other thing is, my calling is what I do. I love being a professor. I love teaching millennials. They are a challenge.
Wow.
They're wonderful. You know, they come to me and they say, I want to be a leader. And I say, you know, that's not a job description and it's not a destination. Let's talk about what you're going to learn and know. So somebody will follow you. And then my other favorite line, I want my first job to be meaningful. And I say, your first job is not going to be meaningful. It's going to be your first job. What will be meaningful is somebody will pay you to do it for the first time. That's what's going to happen. So, I want my first job.
Suppose some president came along again and said, you did a great job as Secretary of State, why don't you do it again?
You should never try to go home again. I had an amazing alignment of the stars. I had a president who would tell leaders, you know, we grew up together, he would say, because we started out when he was just leaving the governorship of Texas, and he trusted me and I admired him. It was a time of consequence for the country. I have great admiration for people in public service. I don't think we admire enough people who do public service. It's hard. It's hard work. And I just hope, I try so hard with my students not to let them be cynical about public service. I served as Secretary of State. The Foreign Service and the Civil Service people who work in the State Department, not to mention the more than 30,000 foreigners who staff our embassies around the world, are some of the most dedicated people you'll ever find. And so I was honored to lead them, and I loved being the nation's chief diplomat. There was nothing like getting off a plane that said the United States of America and thinking, what can I do to represent this great country? But I'm done.
So when you stepped down as Secretary of State, you handed the reins over to another woman, Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
What was it like, one female Secretary of State handing the reins over to another female? Were you saying we don't need these guys anymore?
Well, and so Madeline, myself, and then Hillary, it had been 16 years since there'd been a white male Secretary of State. And so we were saying, I don't know, maybe we're going to have to do a little affirmative action here and see what happens. But no, it was great. And it's a nice little club, the Secretaries of State. The Dean of the Secretaries of State is George Shultz, who is 97 years old, and is still one of my great mentors. I will tell you a little story because you'll appreciate it. He had a birthday party not too long for Henry Kissinger, who turned 94. And the two of them did 20 minutes walk around the world, no notes, completely coherent. I don't know, but I'm sure hoping it was something in the water at the State Department. So just amazing people.
Well, as I remember, I heard from that party, George Shultz said something, to be 94 again.
Yes, he said, he said from his point of view, Henry was still a promising young man.
So, as you look back on your career, which is extraordinary, what would you say you're most proud of having done?
Well, with the caveat that history takes a long time to judge, I think I'm most grateful that we stood up for the right of people to live in freedom. I know that there were a lot of cynics about and a lot of criticism, and some of it totally justified, about the freedom agenda and declaring that one of America's most important purposes was to work hard so that no one would live in tyranny. But I think America is at its best, its highest calling, when it leads both from power and principle. When we stand for the proposition that the rights that we enjoy are indeed universal, and if they are universal, that there are no people for whom they shouldn't be secured. And so I'm very grateful that we were able to do that. When I think back on some of my travels, it was always when it was about people. And a couple of things stick out in particular. I went to China, to Chengdu, after the great earthquake there, and a little boy, more than about 12 years old, walked up to me and he said, "You're that lady from the United States, aren't you?" And I thought, yeah, I am. And then, just with, people have asked me what was it like to be a woman representing the United States in the Middle East, where women were second-class citizens. And one story really sticks in my mind there. I had a very difficult meeting with a Shia cleric, a very conservative Shia cleric, who couldn't touch me because I was a woman outside of his family. And at the end of the meeting, this very difficult meeting, it's in Iraq, he said, "Will you do me a favor?" He didn't speak English, through the translator. He said, "Will you do me a favor?" I thought, "A favor? Really?" I said, "Sure." He said, "My 13-year-old granddaughter watches you on television and she loves you. And she and her mother are coming to the States. Would you meet them?" And so on that day, this little 13-year-old girl comes in a pink t-shirt that says Princess. And she walks up to me in perfect English and says, "I want to be foreign minister too." And I thought, there was something in that moment, because her very conservative grandfather beamed when he thought about this little girl. This problem, this progress that we try to bring through democracy, through justice and equality, it's a long, long, long road. And people have traveled that road for a long time, America's traveled it for a very long time, and we're still working at it. And so the thing I'm most grateful for is that even with our own troubles here in the United States, we stood for the proposition that every man, woman, and child should live in freedom.
Well, I want to highly recommend to everybody here this book, which I enjoy very much reading, Democracy.